Please help support the channel by visiting our Amazon store, affiliate link below. Hey, what's going on, everybody? My name is Matt Jarbo. This is the Mundane Matt channel, and I don't even have a lead-in for this video. I just look at the headline of this article, and I'm just like, you know, because leave it to the progressives, leave it to the feminists, because you know they're somehow associated with this, to start going after the sanctimony of the BFF in elementary kids, right? Never mind the fact that we have relied, at least on a school system that I would argue is probably worldwide. We've relied on the buddy system, right? Oftentimes, as you hang out with your best friend, you're like, all right, we're gonna go and be together, and we're gonna be accountable for each other, so on and so forth. But apparently now that's a problem. That's problematic. Saying here, schools are banning besties to protect students' feelings. Maybe I'm overreacting to at least the headline of the article, but let's take a look, shall we, to see whether or not the anger raging inside me right now is justified. So it says here that members of the royal family aren't often told what they can and can't do, but just a few days into his first year of school, 4-year-old Prince George already faces a mandate: no best friends allowed. So if it can happen to you, it can happen to anyone, like the royals, right, that are being told, no, you cannot have a best friend for your child in kindergarten, I would assume. Tomas Battersea, the school George attends, bans kids from having best friends. Instead, teachers encourage all students to form bonds with one another to avoid creating feelings of exclusion among those without best friends. So basically, if your child is antisocial, or your child has trouble adjusting, and your child has trouble connecting with a friend, instead of working with that child to better strengthen bonds with those around them, to be inclusive, to also try to include themselves, to, you know, make friends the old-fashioned way of play dates, because that's how a lot of this stuff goes down. No, just get rid of the concept of best friends, because clearly the child I don't want to say loser, the loner, is the one whose feelings need protected. But what about those that are somewhat codependent, that do need and do thrive on having a best friend, a person that they're able to grow alongside with? See, I know that when I met my best friend at the age of 5, his mother was my babysitter. We went to kindergarten together. We went to first grade together. I ended up moving to another town the year after that, but we remained tight as hell all the way through our teens and into young adulthood, until a few things kept us apart, i.e. his wife, who I'll never like, but that's not the point. The point I'm trying to get to here is we went through everything together. We relied on each other for everything. Entertainment, hanging out, roller skate derbies, or going on roller skate leagues, like sneaking into our first R-rated movie, smoking our first cigarette together, drinking our first beer, smoking our first weed, getting a minor in possession at an elementary school playground at 3 a.m. when we were 16 years old. Those are the good old days. I'm not saying this all stemmed from being BFF at the age of 5. I'm merely saying friends help friends get into trouble. And when you try to eliminate that support system, so to speak, you're doing more damage than you are doing good. And I understand the idea here is essentially Hillary Clinton's "it takes a village," but it doesn't. Not when we as a society have adopted the buddy system for pretty much the most recent history I can think of. All right, buddy systems work well. People go off in pairs. We pair each other off pretty frequently. But this is okay. Let's just continue this thing. Jane Moore, a parent whose child attends the school, explained the idea on a recent episode of the British talk show Loose Women. Okay. There's a policy, she said, that if your child is having a party, unless every child is invited, you don't get to give out invites in class. Now, I understand that. I do get the notion behind that, but at the same time, you're telling kids that if you don't include everybody, you can't include anyone, right? That's just insane. Are the kids gonna have to take their invitations, hang out in the hallway, be like, hey, yo, Beatrice, yo, girl, party going on. James was over, hey, what's going on? James, no, James, not you, dog, not you. Listen, go drink. No, that shouldn't even be a thing. This is like helicopter parenting in schools now. I don't want to argue. I don't want to use the term nanny state because I feel it's way too Alex Jonesy, but it does come across as something like that, doesn't it? It's like telling your kids, no, you can't be friends with one specific person or a group of people that becomes your clique. Instead, if you're not friends and forming bonds with everyone, then you can't do it. These are like kindergartners, not people trying to engage in an orgy. It is not the same thing. But she, but he goes on to say here, the trend of banning best friends has been growing for several years, and it's spread beyond the European borders to American schools as well. Some psychologists and parents argue kids become more well adjusted when they have a larger friend group and can avoid negative feelings associated with being left out. And I understand that. I do. I'll be perfectly honest with you guys. I'll be perfectly honest in the situation. Recent example. I went to VidCon. Okay, I went with Sargon of Akkad, Wizard of Kaz, Armored Skeptic, Shoe on Head, Bunty King, the Warskis, Vernaculus, the Honey Badgers, a whole slew of other people. All right, and a lot of these people all know each other. They're really tight. I'm kind of on the outskirts of all that. The joke I used was I was a man without a country going in because I didn't have anyone that I was specifically tight with. All right. But after the course of 5 days, we spent every day hanging out. It became a gigantically inclusive event, minus some drama, but it became a massively inclusive event that didn't need to happen. And if we would have, forced this on everybody, it wouldn't have worked out as well as it did. These things can naturally occur in the wild. Without trying to ban best friends or a buddy system when you're in elementary school. Like, that's the whole aspect here. This is a ridiculous concept that I think is going to harm more children, because once you get out of school, you're not always going to have that support group. And there are people, usually a select few in your life, that you rely on and that rely on you. And forcing them to try to include and accept everybody is going to spread it a little bit too thin. People aren't going to be able to maintain that many relationships, especially the older they get. Okay, when you're younger, making friends is freaking easy. When you're younger, making friends is super simple, all right? Like, hey, you go to the same school, you like the same thing, you go hang out. When you're older, past college, it's tough. People get jobs, they get married, they have kids, you get older. After that, you start becoming friends with your kids' friends' parents, because they're the most constant in your life in terms of having that go-to. That is, unless you've got, let's say, a BFF or someone you've been able to maintain that long-lasting relationship with, someone who gets you, that escape, if you will. It's one of those things. It just makes me crack up, and they're trying to take this away by impacting a younger generation and telling them, no, this is bad. You can't do this. Why not teach both? Why not say, look, you can have your friends, but don't leave anyone out? But you also can't force everyone to get along. It's just never going to work. It's never going to work, period. So people who support kids having larger friend groups in place of best friends tend to view these larger groups as healthier for nurturing a sense of belonging. We try to talk to kids and work with them to get them to have big groups of friends and not be so possessive about friends. This coming from Christine Lakub, the director of counseling at Mary Institute in St. Louis. But best friends with their tight bonds and inside jokes throw a wrench into that open environment, school officials contend. Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with having inside jokes. I can sit there and call up my best friend right now, and I could just text him at 2 a.m, some random Clerks animated series joke, right? And he will get it instantly. Or I can reference one of the many adventures we've gone on in our youth, and he would get it instantly. Or he could throw it back in my face and make a joke out of it. That is how you know you have a tight bond with someone. And it doesn't matter if you're part of a large group or not, but it's like still trying to take that away. It does a lot to kind of adjust, I would say to an extent, a person's bond with other people on an individual level. If you start associating everyone liking everybody with having to like the group, then it almost forces the group to take form. And if there's ever a break in that group, it destroys the entire dynamic unless it's filled with somebody else, and there may not be a mesh there. Again, instead of kind of treating it kind of like, like just different pockets of people coming together for one key thing, you're kind of screwing kids over for when they just need to rely on one person and they can't rely on everybody. So in England, where the trend is still more popular, schools across southwest London, Kingston, and Surrey have taken up the practice. Some accounts suggest the practice has moved up north to Canada, as teachers in big schools may shuffle friendships around to expose kids to a range of peers. That's okay. That one I'm actually not as much against. If you start noticing that two kids are hanging out and they're hanging out a lot and they're not getting their work done, yeah, shuffle them around, help that out a little bit. There's nothing wrong with that. But when you're outright trying to ban the idea of a best friend, where if you see two kids hanging out together for too long and all of a sudden the independent thought alarm kicks off and you then move one to a school in a different state or whatever, that's a problem. And I know that's an extreme, like completely unrealistic example, but it's almost what it feels like. It's just someone going, friends, and then they just remove them from that environment, right? And when we develop bonds with people, if they're gone for too long or in some particular way, we rise, our cortisol levels rise, and then that causes us physical pain. So you are kind of essentially hurting children in some examples. Anyway, a wealth of research indicates best friends create value for people throughout their lives. One study recently published in Child Development found people with best friends enjoy better mental health well into adulthood. Again, I think the inside jokes really play off. People share experiences and they're not isolated in those experiences or forcing it to be part of a larger group. We weren't surprised that better adolescent close friendships turned out to be important, but we were surprised just how important they turned out to be into adulthood, coming from Rachel Nahr, University of Virginia doctoral student and lead author of the study. Her study also found kids with broader friends group tend to grow up with higher rates of social anxiety than kids with smaller number of closer friends. And although anti-best friend policies may help kids in the short term, research suggests that strong connections found amongst best friends could be vital for mental health in a world where adolescents are lonelier than ever, which is very true. It's so true. And what this anti-best friend like rule is going to do, it is going to impact kids in the long run. My little girl, when she's old enough to go to school in a couple of years and she goes out there and she meets her best friend, I don't know how it's going to happen, in whatever format it's going to happen. I'm a social person, so I'm pretty sure she's going to be social as well. And then if she all of a sudden, if we get a note from the teacher saying, well, her and little Cindy Lou Whoville were spending too much time together, so they've been separated. I'm going to go down there and raise hell. I'm like, is her grades being impacted? Is she can't do her work? Can Cindy not do her work? What are you doing to my kid? Stop it. Because these kind of socially regressive, and let's be realistic, socially regressive policies here are trying to push the more inclusive group dynamic, of which I don't have an overall issue with. But again, you have to form strong bonds with those people in a smaller level before you're able to go to a larger group here. It's kind of like the whole issue of you gotta walk before you can run. And what they want these kids to do here is screw actual walking. They don't want them to go for a walk. They want them to hit a full sprint on a cross-country marathon and then have that be the norm for their entire life. And no, in an age when kids are growing up and hitting adolescence and phones and social media and the way that the internet works and the way that we communicate via the internet does make kids lonelier than ever, that can have a greater impact if that group dynamic fails to hold. So while I understand that these schools are wanting to look out for the loner kid, instead of working on the minority problem, which would be helping that child become more socially agreeable in those situations and have less social anxiety and better confidence by interjecting them into certain events that would allow for team building exercises, they are forcing everyone to forego a BFF policy in order to help that one kid. I'm sorry. This is a situation where really it's it's best for everyone to let these things play out instead of trying to force them. Because when you force these policies, nothing good ever happens. Hey guys, that wraps up this video. If you'd like to leave a comment, please do so below. I love to read your guys' input. Be sure to hit that thumbs up button. It really does help me in the YouTube algorithm. If you want to support the channel, there's the Amazon affiliate store, there's PayPal, there's Patreon, there's Bitcoin. And if you're bored and you want something else to watch, check out 3 Buck Theater up here. My name is Matt Jarbo. I will talk to you guys later. Have yourself a wonderful day. Peace out.